When playing a retro game, there's always been a word that has brought a smile to my face. Continue. This is not only because it signifies that we'll be playing the game again, but it also represents progression. And it always feels good to know that you're close to beating a game. It's hard to forget that this is a feature and wasn't available for a lot of games I played growing up. Fun fact, the original Zelda cartridge came with a battery that would allow you to have your game saved in memory. When the battery would expire though, so would your game. We learned this the hard way because we had a cartridge with a defective battery. But not all games did this. I remember there was a game that my brother and I used to play, and it had this way to continue your game, but with a thing called a mantra. So it's time to relive this game and see if it's as good as I remember. This is Faxanadu. Faxanadu is a side-scrolling RPG game that was released in 1990 by Hudson Soft, and this was the same company that brought us the Bomberman series, Adventure Island, and more recently, Mario Party. But when it came to Faxanadu, I always remember being confused when playing this game because while the story might have been simple, the gameplay was not. And I'm not surprised at all by this because the game was one of many that was inspired by Zelda. But let's get to the game. The game starts out with our silent protagonist marching towards a city with some of the loudest footsteps I've ever heard. We get to the castle only to find out that it is overrun by these huge one-legged tadpole mutants. You find out from the king that the wells of the city have gone dry and you need to figure out how to restore them. Cool, we have some direction. Let's go. Before we can go though, the king gives us some money as we'll need to stop by a few shops to be able to fend off the numerous enemies in this game. You're able to buy weapons, armor, magic potions, and keys inside of the towns throughout the game, making combat easier as you continue on to harder enemies. As we journey into this dangerous land that lies beyond the castle gates, it's here where the combat system does start to annoy me a little bit. The first thing that bothered me is the jumping. It's the type of jumping where you have zero control when you push the arrow on your D-pad. So if your jump isn't perfect, you're definitely going to get hurt by an enemy or miss a ledge. There are these little spike enemies that crawl on the ground all over the place and you can't hit them with your first weapon. And the only way you can is with magic. And since your magic bar doesn't restore itself automatically, you have to jump over these enemies time and time again. The second thing though was the way you generate money in this game. And there's two ways to do this. The first one being the old-fashioned way. You kill an enemy, you get gold. Simple. Not all enemies drop gold though. Some drop bread that helps you restore life. The second way is kind of cheating to generate gold, but they did something really backhanded to us, which I'll explain in a minute. So throughout the game, you gain experience, and at certain points, if you speak to a priest in the town, they will bestow upon you a title. This title does a few things to tweak the game, but the main thing it does is when you die, it guarantees that you will have a certain amount of gold. So when you want to buy something, all you have to do is get a certain title, buy the item you want, die, and then we get to start the game with a generous sum of money again. As we journey on, we encounter this wall that can only be broken by an item called the Maddock, and of course, it is being guarded by the first boss. We get to the first boss, and wow, this battle sucked. This thing hits hard. One of its fireballs killed me. Now, I know it wasn't full health, but that still was about a fourth of my life. So after being killed once, I come back and kill him and get the Maddock. Now, here's where I learned the hard way that the screen will reset every single time you leave and come back. So I made the mistake of walking away from this screen to go back to town and get health. And then came back to not only the wall being back, but finding out the Maddock is a consumable item. So now I have to go all the way back and fight that stupid boss again. This sucked. At this point, I had to take a break and found out the hard way that saving your game isn't really saving your game. Remember how some games came with batteries so you could just save your game and load it back up? Well, this game had a clever but annoying way to save your progress, and it allowed you to continue. So you would go to a priest and they would give you a mantra. Now, the way this works is pretty cool, but still a little bit annoying. The letters and numbers would correspond with an item and a value. So for example, JX could signify the armor in your possession, while UC represents the armor in your inventory. Mind you, I have no idea the way these codes work, but I do understand the concept of how they work. And I just wanted to give a shout out to the guys over at RNES and R Retro Gaming, because they were actually the ones that explained this method to me. So thanks a lot, you guys. You guys are awesome. Now, while this method may have been ingenious back then, it was extremely frustrating because you would have to put this mantra in and so many characters look alike. The lowercase L and the capital I look exactly the same. So when my dad and older brother would put these codes in, we would sometimes put them incorrectly. And you gotta remember, this is back in the 1990s, so we had to write this down on paper, and I don't have the best handwriting. So when we put in our mantra, it didn't work, and at that point, we just gave up on the game. But let's get back to the story. So we journey through the world and find a Gandalf lookalike who helps us restore some of the wells, and I also got attacked by one of the California raisins. These guys are hurting for work. So we eventually make it to a level that will ruin your eyesight, and it's like they put an entire filter over this screen to simulate fog. Getting through this part of the game sucked, but we eventually make it through this level and make our way through multiple towns, upgrading our armor, weapons, and magic. The game is pretty much straightforward. You do have to get different keys every now and again to open different doors, but with the right hints, the right weapons, and the right magic, the game isn't too difficult. Speaking of armor and magic, I think it's actually time to tell you about the underhanded trick that they did to us. At the beginning of the game, you find this shop owner who's selling a magical shield and the spell called Death, which are the second highest magic and second highest shield in the game. The problem is the prices are insane. So the only enemy we can really get gold from at the beginning of the game are from the jumpy tadpole morons, and each time you kill one, they drop 59 gold. I decided to do the math to figure out how long it would take me to acquire both of these items. So considering that I can kill 2 of these enemies on this screen, which would net me about 108 gold every 10 seconds, and factoring in the total for both items, which are 20,100 gold, I would have to kill these 2 tadpoles about 187 times to get the required gold. So by my calculations, it would take me about 31 minutes of killing them perfectly. So I said, screw it, and continued on without getting either of these items. But let's talk about the final area of the game. As we make it to the final area before we fight the final boss, it's highly recommended we get the final weapon, known as the Dragon Slayer. And the boss guarding this weapon, he is not easy. He has an attack that you can't block, and he can take a ton of hits. So after about 5 different tries though, we're finally able to kill him, and we get the final weapon, which allows us to use the final armor and the final shield, which is really a helmet. I mean, at least we look cool now, so whatever. We get to the final boss, and he was so easy. I killed him on my first try using a couple potions. All he really does is walk towards you, shoot fireballs, and that's it. There was nothing more to him. The boss guarding the Dragon Slayer was harder than this no-neck bastard. Anyways, once you kill the final boss, you return to the king's castle, and he thanks you for your service. And I really like the ending to this game. It's real simple. He's walking on the same path, but this time away from the town that he just saved. This is the way to end a game with no words needed. Just simply have the hero walk away to some music, some footsteps, and then the game restarts. Beautiful. Reliving this game is like getting school pizza. It's just a cheap substitute, trying to be something that it's not, and it really can't compare to the real thing. Everything about this game just felt like a cheap rip-off of Zelda 2: The Adventures of Link, but it was missing key components that made Zelda 2 a decent game. The mantra system was creative, but having continue would have been better. The filter was creative, but was just a cheap rip-off of when you would fight in the dark in Zelda 2. And every time I play this game, I just want to play Zelda 2 instead. Mind you, this is still a game I can recommend trying, but just like school pizza, you'll put it down soon after to go get the real thing. I just wanted to thank everyone for watching DWRelive reviews, and if there's a game that you'd like us to review, please leave it in the comments below. We'll be posting new videos once a week, so click that notification button to get the latest in the series. As always, relive those great moments one game at a time. Until next time.